Cody, can you hear us?
Yep. How's it going?
Doing really well. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are now joined by Cody Ware. If you do have a question for Cody, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll get to as many questions as we can in the time allowed. Our first question today is going to come from Jacob Seelman. Go ahead with your question, Jacob.
Thanks, Matt and Cody. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us here. Actually got two questions for you. First, kind of relies a little bit outside the racetrack. A lot of us who know you've done a lot for mental health advocacy over the last couple of years, and you mentioned on social media before the start of the year here that you want to tie those efforts into your racing program however you can this year. Talk a little bit about that and where those efforts for you right now sit.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I kind of talked about before the year got started back in December was finally getting off of both anti-anxiety and antidepressants. I was on Lexapro and Valium for years and years and years, and it helped out to an extent, but it also gave me a lot of hindrances both on and off the racetrack. And so I started working on some experimental brainwave treatments that were being tested on people with PTSD, coming back from war, veterans, things like that. And because a lot of my anxiety and depression spawns from a traumatic event that I had in high school. And so after 2 weeks of very intense therapy there, I was able to pretty aggressively get off the meds. I actually quit Valium cold turkey, which really is something that even my doctors were not exactly ecstatic about, because that's a pretty hardcore drug to be on for years and years. And so kind of as it made me feel pretty proud about what I was doing, because I never thought that I'd be able to get off medicine. My mom always told me that I could. 10 years later, we're finally there. And so I want to give back. I'm definitely working with a few different companies to partner up and, spread a bigger message than I've had in the past. I've had a pretty active presence with that on social media, but I want to take that to the next level this year and actually promote that, on the track as well.
And talking about on the track, I know there's been talk about possible open wheel stuff. We know you're going to run full time in the Cup car this year, but you've really diversified your efforts out over the last couple of years. Coming back to NASCAR, you've been in the sports car. How do you feel like doing everything you've done lately and may get a chance to do this year has made you a better driver, more prepared for this Cup season that you're about to go on?
Yeah, I think had a first test at Sebring in the IndyCar back on Wednesday 2 weeks ago, and it went really well. I think a lot of the training that I've been doing for the prototypes and open wheel stuff has gotten me in a lot better shape than I've been racing in Cup in previous years. And I think a lot of that's just going to translate over. Getting to work with a lot of great engineers at Honda and things like that have really broadened my perspective on a lot of things that will translate over to the stock car as well. And so I think it's something where if I can become strong in some of the things that I'm doing outside of NASCAR, a lot of that's going to carry over and just make the 21 season that much better for me.
I appreciate everything you're doing, bud. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob.
Our next question is going to come from Mark Garrow. Go ahead with the question, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning, Cody. I think it's good afternoon, I guess.
Yeah, good afternoon. Hey, Mark.
At this particular point. Joey Gase was on just a few moments ago, and we were talking about some of the criticisms that some of the top drivers give some of the guys in the back of the pack. And do you guys sort of band together a little bit back there to kind of defend each other in the sense from these criticisms, or have at least give each other a sounding board for it?
Yes and no. There's definitely a lot of that. I only ran 2 stock car races in 2020, one at Talladega in the Cup Series and one at the Xfinity race at the Roval. I've had a lot of success over the past year or so in sports cars, and then the 2 times I was in the stock car last year went really well. So thankfully, haven't really had any issues with that myself lately. There's always going to be critics, anytime you're not on the lead lap and being lap traffic, there's going to be issues. And thankfully, I haven't had many personal run-ins myself, except for with one particular driver. And so, and a lot of that was thinking that it was me in the car when it was actually somebody else. And so, other than that, I'm not too worried about it. It is what it is, and being a back marker is just something we're going to have to deal with at times.
And what's it like being part of a team like that that's really trying to make some headway and just don't have the kind of budgets the other guys have to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the results are going to speak for themselves. You know, I had a top 10 run going at Talladega before I got hit by Kenseth on the last lap and was relegated to a 19th place finish. And so for me, if a 19th place run for me was a bad day and then followed it up with a top 10 in the Xfinity race, the week after that, I think that we're showing that when we have the budget and the funding, we can put the cars together and we can, get our way up the standings on the race weekends. And so I don't have many opinions on it at the moment, other than I do believe that, we're going to have better showings through the season.
And my final question to you, you're obviously a very versatile driver. Do you feel you're kind of undervalued because you're unknown, or the fact that many people don't know the amount of racing that you've done and the diversity of what you can do?
In the past, I would have said yes. Going into this year, even working with Austin Dillon at the Rolex 24 was a major boost to my credibility. I think, he learned a lot from me, and I was able to learn a lot from him on the stock car side. And I actually took him to the Delaris simulator in Indianapolis the week before the Rolex, and was able to work with him and get him running pretty awesome in the sports car. And so doing things like that are a major boost to my help. And I think that'll also help with my credibility and respect on the NASCAR track. And people are starting to see now that, I have a lot more of this time, particularly on the road courses, than people probably realize. I was a factory backed development driver for Lamborghini back in 2014 or 15, done a lot of racing in sports cars, and now trying to really hit it hard in NASCAR in 21. And so it's just a time thing. You got to earn it. You got to earn respect. I can't just get on social media and be like, blah, blah, blah. This is what I've done. Just need to go out there and do it. People will see. People have started to see this year, and it just takes time.
Do you think the adding of all these road courses on the Cup Series schedule will kind of play to you becoming or getting a little more notoriety this year?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm just quite frankly just simply excited about it. Road America, Indianapolis road course, all these places are going to be a ton of fun to race at. And so I'm just excited to get to add in a pretty hefty road course schedule into a Cup season. I mean, there's some guys in IMSA that all they do is 7 or 8 races for a championship in a year. And we get to put 7 or 8 road course races on the schedule alone in NASCAR. And so really it's almost a full-blown road racing schedule in NASCAR alone. And so that just jacks me up to know that spread out through the year, there's going to be a lot of chances to have some fun doing what I love.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Our next question is going to come from Jenna Fryer. Go ahead with your question, Jenna.
Hey, Cody, I have 2 completely different questions. I wanted to circle back to you, what you were talking about with Jacob. You said that medications were hindering you on the track. I'm wondering in what way and how you kind of link the 2 together.
The biggest thing was one of the major side effects of the Valium was like dehydration. So I struggled a lot with overheating and really losing all my fluids during the race. This past year at Talladega and at the Roval, I was able to get one of the cool shirts. It's the same thing that like Jimmy and Chase and a lot of these upper guys have been running over the past couple of years, and having that to keep my body temp down and not lose all my liquids through sweating was a big help. So the Lexapro and the antidepressants weren't a major hindrance, but the Valium just had a lot of physical side effects with sweating and dehydration that were really tough to combat on the racetrack on the hot race weekends.
And you were able, once you stopped taking them, you noticed a difference immediately?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did about 6 or 7 stints at the Rolex, and the way my body felt, even on a lack of sleep and a lack of food, was better than I've ever felt in a race car. And so it gave me a lot of confidence going into the Daytona 500 weekend.
And then your dad was on a Zoom yesterday. We talked a lot about you and his plans and your plans this season. He said you will be doing IndyCar races. You did the Rolex. You are in a lot of different places right now. I guess you enjoy it, number one, but where do you want to be in your career? Do you want to be able to race in multiple series and be able to compete in them and compete for wins? Or are you going to focus on one eventually?
I think from a career standpoint, eventually I will have to focus on one, but to kind of answer your other question, the big thing is I do want to be in a racing series and compete in any form of racing where I can be successful. last year after I finished the A's in the Moss series. I ran 3 races in 2020, which was a GT4 race at Sonoma, which I podiumed, 2 of the 3 races there, had a top 20 at Talladega and Cup and a top 10 at Xfinity car at Charlotte. And the message I'm trying to send with that is I really only want to be in the race car if it's quality. I know that I have the ability to run better than I have in the past. And just riding around being a field filler is something that I'm not interested in. And so, partnering with NerdTech ODT in the 51 car this year has given me more confidence that the program is going to be in a place where I'm going to feel more comfortable racing on a weekly basis, because at long term, I want to go for wins, podiums, and have success. I don't just want to be out there to be out there.
Did you feel comfortable in the Indy car at Sebring?
I felt great. Yeah, I think the P2 cars are actually very similar. The biggest difference was just the braking force. But other than that, I think lap time wise, we're a bit off the leaders, but pace to the other rookies, we were right there with them. So I'm really excited about it. It's probably the most fun I've ever had driving a race car in the Indy car, and looking forward to getting back to some more testing at Indy and Road America and see how it plays out.
Thank you, Cody.
Thanks, Jenna.
Our next question is going to come from Lee Spencer. Go ahead with your question, Lee.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us, Cody. How did it feel to finally get your first top 10 in NASCAR last year?
It was super emotional. Obviously, kind of being on the butt end of a lot of bad situations in NASCAR, it starts to take a toll on you, especially when you don't really have anything good to look back on. And coming to the checkered at the Roval last year was really a culmination of feelings, good and bad. And it was almost kind of like an absolving of all the negative feelings I had inside of me. A lot of people don't realize I'm my own worst critic. And as much as I get flack, deserved and undeserved, both on social media and in person, I'm harder on myself than anyone else could be. And to finally put the pieces of the puzzle together and have some success was really needed for me. It was a needed confidence boost and something to, show me, hey, if we just keep working on myself, I keep working on my mental health, my physical health, and get the pieces of the puzzle together to get the cars on track that I want to be in, that even one good day makes all of the horrible days worth it.
And it's kind of ironic that you're saying you don't want to be a back marker, you don't want to drive in car equipment that's not competitive. Roman said the same thing yesterday, but I was wondering, have you met him yet? And you think that there's a shot that you or your father might be able to persuade him to give ovals a try in NASCAR?
I think there's definitely an opportunity there. We've talked about, going forward with maybe doing some teaming up with some of the IndyCar guys for the Rolex 24 next year, and then maybe having some guys come over and doing some Cup stuff. I think also, just having guys like, Ed Jones and Romain Grosjean as teammates, both with DCR and RWR and just with Dale Coyne Racing. I'll learn a lot from them as drivers. Romain obviously has, more experience than I can even fathom in a race car. And then Ed Jones is also a veteran in IndyCar. And so being able to partner with these guys and learn from them, and also hopefully share some rides and do some swapping around, I think could end up being a lot of fun and a great learning experience for everybody.
And finally, you said you're your own worst critic, or your staunchest critic. But that being said, is it sometimes tough going to your father, knowing your father's the boss, because sometimes that dynamic between father and son is a little tricky at times anyway. But driving for the home team, is as great at times as that can be. There's also strange, like I said, a dynamic that comes into play at times.
Yeah, there's definitely a stress factor with it. Not so much now this year than there was in the past. With when we first started going Cup racing full time in 2017, I was stressed, not so much from the performance standpoint, but from the fear of tearing up a race car, costing the family money that we really didn't have to lose. And so as much as it is a blessing to be a part of a race team with my family and have that security, there are quite a few stress factors there that come into play that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I was terrified. I mean, I had to drive very conservatively in my opening years and opening handful of Cup starts in NASCAR, because I was scared to wreck the car and cost the family money. And things like that in the past. But now with a full season sponsor and a charter, that's a lot of that's in the past now. But definitely a blessing and a curse at times driving for the family.
Glad to see things paid off. Good luck this season.
Thank you, Lee.
Our next question is going to come from Dustin Albino. Go ahead with the question, Dustin.
Yeah, Cody, kind of right off that, the team has 3 full-time drivers this year, yourself, Joey, and Josh. How much of an advantage is that instead of having drivers come in weekly or every other week or whatever the case may be?
I think it's going to end up being a night and day difference. If even from a crew chief and crew perspective, having the same driver in the car week in and week out helps build a relationship, but not just the relationship. The crew chief and the mechanics can learn what the driver wants particularly. And every time you have this revolving door of race car drivers, they kind of have to start from ground zero. You start with a baseline setup. You try to make some adjustments where you can for the new driver, but really it takes weeks and weeks and months to really develop a program and a race car around a particular driver. And without that, you're only going to race at a certain level. But this year in 21, we really want to up that because we have guys like Mike Hillman that are crew chiefing my car, that if we can work together for a full season, we can, build the car. He can work with me and learn what I want and doesn't have to start from ground zero every race weekend.
Thank you.
Our next question is going to come from Stephen Toronto. Go ahead with your question, Stephen.
Cody, I wanted to go back to your first Daytona 500 in 2019. You were involved in an accident coming to pit road that took out a couple of front runners. How have you grown as a driver since then, particularly in stock cars? And on that note, do you feel better prepared for your second Daytona 500 maybe you did for your first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the big thing is not letting things get to me as much as they did. I think that, to answer your question, as far as do I feel more prepared? Of course I do. I mean, I have a lot more races under my belt, won a championship overseas in a P2 car and things like that. But, the fact remains that there still was a lot of play with that wasn't just my fault. Obviously, there's things that I could have done better in the situation, but there was a lot of team orders between spotters that weren't being spoken about. No one really told anyone that they were coming down pit road. And so, unfortunately, there's probably 50% blame on me and 50% blame on spotters and people that were trying to get to pit road without everybody knowing. And so I can only do so much if I don't have information. And unfortunately, I was, the butt into that. But, next time we're just going to not put ourselves in a position to be that guy, I guess.
Thanks, Cody. But by the way, I wasn't trying to suggest that accident was on you, so I just wanted to make that clear. I'm sorry if it came across.
No, understandable. I appreciate it.
Our next question is going to come from Luis Torres. Go ahead. The question, Luis.
Thank you, Matt. Kind of adding on to it, how is it going from different disciplines that help you grow as a person? Because I see around social media from other people, I have personally no clue some of your takes per se, that a lot of people have realized that you have matured and actually are real proud of your growth. How gratifying is it to have that, especially going into your career where you had recent success, including the Age of Le Mans and that top 10 in the Robo?
I wouldn't necessarily call it gratifying. What it does for me is build a level of comfort. I don't expect to be a superhero out there in the cars that I'm racing in NASCAR. I just want to earn enough respect to where I can feel like almost fly under the radar with my fellow drivers. Guys like BJ McLeod do a really good job at basically seeming like a ghost out there. He gives lots of room to the leaders, never really gets involved with incidents, but also everyone knows that he's a good race car driver as well, and he's doing the best with what he can. And I'm hoping to get to that point with my fellow Cup drivers to, it gives me comfort knowing that I'm not getting flack or I'm not seen as a liability racing around. And it just gives me the peace and comfort to focus on the things that I need to focus on and not get consumed by opinions and worries and things like that from other people.
Thank you.
Our next question is going to come from Dustin Long. Go ahead with your question, Dustin.
Thanks. Cody, maybe it's getting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit, but with the IndyCar stuff, are you thinking about trying to do something like a double Memorial Day weekend with Indianapolis and Charlotte? And obviously, if something like that's an idea, that's, I'm sure the planning is going in place already, but what's the thought process on that? Is that something you're looking at doing?
There's definitely been some very brief discussion on things like that. Logistically, I don't have a private plane or a helicopter or anything like that. So honestly, money really is the biggest factor on even going down that road, because really my only options would be commercial unless I found a sponsor to just about pay for a private plane or a helicopter. And so just with how close the start times are now. And so there might be one or two of these IndyCar races that I partake in that I might have to miss out on a cup race just because I don't have, the funds of a Kurt Busch type or somebody that can just, jet set wherever they need to be. That's going to be just part of one of the struggles I'll have. But at the end of the day, I think we have an awesome opportunity to partner with NerdTech OTD, both on the stock car side and in IndyCar. And I'm just wanting to take advantage of and do a little bit of everything, even though it's a bit unconventional. We'll see how it plays out.
How enticing might it be? Again, I know, as you say, it comes down to money, but just to potentially be one of a few guys to maybe do the double.
I think it would be, an amazing experience. On the flip side of it, though, the Indy 500 is something that I never would even have dreamed about racing. Being 6'4", a very tall race car driver, I never really even thought I could sit in a single seater car, let alone actually go racing. And so I just want to look at it from a slightly different perspective of I might want to soak it in and spend time looking at the pagoda and being in Indianapolis and enjoying all those things, because, both from a money and from a physical perspective, I never thought that IndyCar would even be on a bucket list of things that I would ever go racing in. And so it's a little bit different for me, taking on this IndyCar program.
And one last thing is, so how were you convinced to try this IndyCar stuff then, especially when you said at one point you didn't think you'd be too big and it wasn't something you thought of? Why are you going down this road? What kind of led you to this path in that sense?
Well, the big thing is everyone that knows me knows I'm a big road racer. I love road racing. And as much as I love IMSA, there are a lot of variables that come into play when you're racing with co-drivers. And in IndyCar, it's, me, myself, and I live or die by my own sword. And if I mess up, that's on me. I don't have to worry about a co-driver wrecking a car and not finishing a race. If I do good, that's on me. If I do bad, that's on me. And when my dad partnered with Dale Coyne last year to tackle the 500, they started a much larger conversation, obviously, as we all know now, because he's partnered with him for the whole season. And the conversations kind of grew from there. Once we had NerdTech ODT on board, they also wanted to do some marketing and branch out their sponsorship to other racing series. And so kind of was an idea like, hey, let's see if he fits. And it was quite a process. I spent 2 different weeks at Dale Coyne Racing trying to fit in a car. We had to do different molds, try all sorts of different seat fits. And it's a very tight fit. I don't have nearly as much padding as I would like to have in the car, but my shoulders are so big and my height is just so high in the car that I'm, making do with what I have. Comfort wise, actually was pretty comfortable in the car. So yeah, we're just going to see how it goes and make the best of it.
Thanks, Cody.
Our next question is going to come from Marty Sakala. Go ahead with the question, Marty.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, Cody. Hope you're doing well, man. I spoke with Joey Gase about this a few moments ago, but that big one, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when in the Daytona 500 these past few years. If you want to give Rick Ware Racing a really good finish in the 500, where would you like to be, in the front or a straightaway back like what Joey Gase said?
I think the big thing is, a lot of what we do at RWR for the plate races is kind of hang out until it's smart to go racing. There are a few drivers in other series like Matt Crafton who have a similar approach to that. I'm hoping to kind of replicate my game plan at Talladega last year, which was kind of get to the halfway point, there was quite a lot of attrition early on at Talladega in October, and it put us in a position finished wise where we could go racing and take a little more risk early on than we normally would as a race team, because a lot of cars had already fallen out. And so hopefully kind of just repeat mentally what I did at Talladega and work our way through the field once some of the chaos unfolds. But as we all know, even with 3 laps to go at Daytona, 10 cars can still get wrecked out. So there's always going to be that risk versus reward, but that's where you just got to have to, make the best call, use your judgment, and, make the best of it.
Thanks for your time, Cody. Have a great Speed Weeks, man.
Yeah. Thanks. Take care, Marty.
Our next question is going to come from Jamil Hawkins. Go ahead with the question, Jamil.
Thank you. So, Cody, earlier in the press conference, you talked about your mental health struggles and how you've dealt with that as a person for yourself. But how has the sport of NASCAR, does NASCAR have any mental health programs in place to help the drivers that we may not know about? Thank you.
NASCAR has a really good medical program. I know a lot of the guys like Kevin who do a wonderful job taking care of us as drivers before races and after races. I don't particularly know if there's anything specifically for mental health, but I know that I have been very vocal about my issues in the past, and I've had people like Kevin who have helped me both physically and mentally to try to get in the right direction to help me. But maybe that's something where a larger conversation can be sparked to actually have a therapist or somebody, a psychiatrist, whatever it may be, in place at track or just available to drivers when they're at home or at Charlotte or wherever, and have that. Because I think there are a lot of guys, both crew drivers, media personnel, that deal with these things that are not super vocal for different reasons. And I think that I would like to see more of that for sure.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Our next question is going to come from Ashley McCubbin. Go ahead with your question, Ashley.
Building on the discussion of mental health, how did you decide to basically be very open about it?
I think it got to the point to where I was just, eating myself up, tearing myself up daily, because, it got to the point to where I couldn't even go have a lunch by myself without having an anxiety attack, because I was just very on edge, very angry with myself all the time and all the things that I'm battling with. And so the only way that I got over my issues was making myself vulnerable. The only way that I was able to tackle my demons was to basically lay it all out on the table, become an open book, wear my heart on my sleeve. And that's definitely a jarring approach for some people, but it's what's helped me grow. I've talked very openly about my attempts with suicide in the past, and I use that as a tool to talk to people that might also deal with the same things. I don't look at it as a crutch or as something that negatively affects me to this day. It's something that I can use to help people, and that's what really matters. What I do for a living, and I race full time, it's awesome, it's a blessing, but the real things that matter when it all is said and done and I'm on my deathbed is, did I help people? Did I make a positive impact on the world? Because even if I went out and won the Daytona 500, that's not going to make an impact in the world. That's not going to help people. It's not going to make the world a better place. And I want to make a true impact on this world, even if it's a little one. Even if I help one person, that would make me happy.
And building upon that, if somebody's going through some stuff right now, what would be one piece of advice you could give them? I know there's a span of different things you could probably offer, but what would be like one top thing?
I'd say the biggest thing is making yourself vulnerable and being willing to talk to somebody. Find one or two people that you're close with that you can have a conversation with, because what I learned was I tried medicine, I tried therapy and all these things, but I was stubborn about it. I really didn't believe in what I was working on, and it didn't matter what medicine I took, what therapist I went to, it wasn't going to work until I took the time to say, hey, I've got to become vulnerable, not weak, but vulnerable, and put myself in a position to where I have to grow and I want to grow. And so the first step in that is just being able to have a discussion with somebody, a really truly blunt conversation, not just, oh, hey, I'm dealing with some things. Like, really lay it out there and pour it out so that someone else can be there for you and relate to you. And once you feel a comfort in being like that, that's when you can really get the help that you need.
Thank you for your honesty and your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Our final question is going to come from Casey Campbell. Question, Casey.
Thank you, Matt Humphrey. Cody, how are you, buddy?
Hey, doing well yourself?
I'm hanging in there, bud. So I know you talked about the IndyCar stuff, and apologize if I apologize if this has been asked because I think I joined late. But I know you're talking about possibly doing the double at Indy. I know there were conversations as well about Detroit, of course, which is also a doubleheader in the IndyCar series. Would you be interested in doing something like that? Because I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the All-Star weekend. I think if I'm correct, Matt, on that.
Yeah, so with that, we looked at that quite a bit. And that might be one of the races where we would call it a wash in NASCAR, because the Detroit's a doubleheader itself, with the race both on Saturday and on Sunday. And with the Texas All-Star race not being a points race, obviously, that would be a weekend where I could really focus my efforts on the IndyCar program and not have to worry about missing a proper points race and Cup.
Okay. All right. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Well, Cody, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and good luck in the Daytona 500.